All right, here we go, baby. Again, it's game week. It is a game week Wednesday. And on Wednesday right now, I want us to do a little what if Wednesday for the college football playoff. Welcome into the hard count. I just mentioned it's Wednesday, December 18th, 2024. Last one on the face of the planet. Got some big what ifs to jump into. All right, hey, what if Oregon wins the national championship? They're our pick on this show to win the national championship. They have the best odds in Vegas to win the whole darn thing. And I think the ripple effect of that, the snowball effect is a better way to say it, would be massive. I think we could, I'll just say it, we could be looking at a little Duck Dynasty, pun intended. Also, I want us to talk a little bit about some of these other what-ifs when it comes to what SMU could be if they win a playoff game. Hey, what if Georgia's offense is better with a different cat at quarterback, assuming Carson Beck can't roll? What if it's Gunner Stockton? What happens to Georgia overall? There's a lot I want to unpack there hypothetically. Speaking of hypotheticals, though, for Quinn Ewers, man, it's not so much a what-if, but like this has got to be the moment for him against Clemson. Because you've had a little bit of a runway here for him when you are, expecting it to be the game. Like, hey, this is the game now. Quinn Ewers balls out. This is the game where and then it's sort of a little bit of a letdown, if you will. And not that they've lost a bunch of games. Your only blemish on your whole darn season is 2 losses to Georgia. Like, there are worse things to have happened there. But with the number 12 seed rolling into your place, a quarterback that beat you in high school, with a quarterback behind you with a last name Manning, I think there's some pressure on Quinn Ewers here. We'll unpack that one together. The transfer portal continues to be nothing but madness. I want us to take a break from the intel side of things because we were kind of getting more and more of that as things roll on. Again, make sure you're following Pete Nakos on Twitter, all the On3 accounts on Twitter. Make sure you got the On3 Plus membership so you can get all the intel as soon as possible. But I want us to take a step back and take inventory of who's winning right now in the transfer portal, and then who is desperate's the wrong word, but like who's got a stacked wish list, if you will, when it comes to the transfer portal. So we'll chop that one up. But I want to start here, and quite frankly, this was going to be a part of our what if segment, but y'all, like it is too pressing, it is too urgent, it is too important for us to leave any later in the show. Y'all, what if Ryan Day and Ohio State lose at home to Tennessee? Now, Buckeye fans, I already hear y'all in the comment section. I hear you via the live chat. I understand now. Hey, we picked Ohio State to win that football game, okay? So I think you win. I think it's close, but I think you win. But let's put ourselves in the world of if Ryan Day and Ohio State were to drop that game in Columbus, because I don't think we've all properly calibrated to what the stakes are in that game. If it's me, and this show is us, so I think if Ryan Day loses that game, there will be a new head coach in Columbus, Ohio. Now, that sounds a little bit harsh. In some ways, it might sound hyperbolic, but like any way you slice this, man, optically, from a vibes perspective, I think it's beyond repair. And now, personally, I'm not saying I would fire Ryan Day if they lost this game. I'm not telling you that. But I think the powers that be, regardless of the vote of confidence, regardless of everyone saying the right thing on the front end, it's easy to talk a big game and say you support a guy before something horrific happens in the college football playoff. I don't know that you would feel that way if they lost Tennessee. Again, it's also worth noting now this spread's 7.5 points. Like it's not a situation where it's like, okay, Ohio State's only favored by 1.5. Vegas is saying Ohio State should win this game relatively handily for whatever that's worth. Games aren't played on paper, they're played on the field. So just what I said a second ago. If they were to pair the Michigan loss with a first-round loss in the college football playoff, and you stack on top of that 3 other previous losses to Michigan outside of this season, like it would not be broken. It would not be broken, but it would be beyond repair. Because at that point, like there's no other excuse, feels like the wrong word, but it feels like the appropriate one that fits here right now. There's no other excuse you can make for why Ohio State has a better chance to be successful outside of this year. Like, okay, hey, they just got to go hit the portal a little bit harder, tweak a few pieces here and there. It's the quarterback. Y'all, your quarterback just led the country in passing this year. Well, we got to, retool the defense a little bit. All your studs came back. You went out and got the best safety, the best portal player, in my opinion, in Caleb Downs just because you felt like it. You stocked the running back room with Quinshon Judkins. You got a freak show true freshman Jeremiah Smith. Like there is no explaining this. There is no, well, next year we got this. No, there is none of that here. And so again, I'm not telling you it's the right move, but I think it would be the move that they would arrive at. Here's the other reason I say that. Even if Ohio State doesn't fire Ryan Day, and again, we wouldn't do that. I've said this many times. If I'm Ryan Day, I'm like, dude, forget this. I am out of here. Like, I win 10, 11 games a year, which most coaches would dream of doing that. At a place like Ohio State, I'm winning 10, 11 games a year, and I still can't even order Uber Eats with my name on it because someone's going to spit in my food. I can't go to the grocery store. I can't say this with 100% certainty, but based on what he said in different interviews, Ryan Day's like, this is really hard on my family. My family's taking heat based on how I'm coaching. And again, how I'm coaching is at a really high level. The dude's lost like 10 games his entire time at Ohio State. Like, he's a good football coach. But the job is the job. The brand is the brand. You know what you sign up for. But again, if I'm Ryan Day, I'm like, dude, forget this. I'll go be a coordinator in the NFL. I'll wait for something else to open up where I can go just have a better quality of life and coach at a high level, and the fan base will be fired up about winning 10, 11 games. Like, he's in the college football playoff, and I'm doing a segment right now about how if they lose at home the first round, I don't think he's the head coach anymore. That in itself should tell you about how hostile the current status is in Columbus, Ohio. And I'm not telling you if you're an Ohio State fan, you're wrong for feeling the way that you feel, but I am saying if I'm Ryan Day, I'd be like, thank you, but no thank you. Had a good time, proved I can coach ball. The Michigan thing is the Michigan thing, and I promise he hates it more than anybody. But, like, at that point in time, I'm like, I forget about this. I am done with this. Can you imagine the ripple effect of Ryan Day taking a coordinator job in the NFL this time next week, potentially, or 2 weeks from now? Can you imagine if we sat here on a Wednesday in, late December, early January, and we're talking about who could be in the running for the Ohio State Buckeye head coach job? Like, that in itself, like, people are crawling over broken glass to be the head coach in Columbus. Say what you want about the standards. Say everything I just said about how hard it is. People want this job, okay? Like, I think you take a massive swing. I've said it multiple times. We're getting ahead of ourselves here, but, like, Marcus Freeman's an Ohio State alum. I get he just got extended. Money is no object for the folks out there in Columbus as proof of this roster. Like, that's another thing, too. What happens to the roster? Again, I'm not telling you I know what would happen, but the transfer portal, whenever a coach leaves, there's a new opportunity for that roster to leave as well. Some really good players on that roster. Some really good players in that quarterback room. Really good player in Caleb Downs who would have more time. Again, we're walking through the steps here of what could be on the table if Ryan Day were to lose this game on Saturday, at home, at night, in front of the entire country. Like, I think it would get very, very ugly. I think it would get very, very uncomfortable. And again, I truly believe, should they lose that game, there will be a new head coach in Columbus, Ohio next year. I don't think I'd be for it. It wouldn't be what I would do if I were the powers that be out there. But still, if I'm Ryan Day, I'd say, I'm out of here. I don't want to deal with this. I'm a good football coach. Good luck finding somebody else that's going to routinely do what I'm doing. So, I don't know what's going to happen there. Again, we think Ohio State wins the football game in large part because they are so desperate, but, like, golly, man, this is the ripple effect of that game. I don't know that we're all aligned or that we're all totally putting ourselves in the proper spot to what could happen here. Like, that is on the table. And again, I think that would be what happens if that were to be the case. Glad to have everyone tuned in live, man. Make sure you have liked the video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel as well. It's college football, nothing but college football year-round. Caden Smith on the ones and twos. Getting a little bit crispy outside. Hey, week away from Christmas. How wild is that? Have heard murmurs, have heard rumblings, folks saying there's no way they have a show on Christmas, right? Wrong. Well, we'll be dialed in, bringing the holiday cheer with you. So make sure you are subscribed. Again, college football year-round, and we mean that. This show brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. Speaking of Christmas, like, hey, I know a lot of y'all are finishing up in this last week. I've made some progress on the Christmas shopping, but I know a lot of y'all are still sprinting through the finish here. Listen, Christmas gifts cost money, and I'll just say this. If you wanted to play Prize Picks with us, there is the potential of us winning some money. Okay, code HARDCOUNT. When you just play $5 in lineups, you get $50 in promo funds. $50 in promo funds, throw it down on a nice little flex play, maybe a power play, depending on how risk-averse you are or aren't feeling. Maybe you pay for some Christmas gifts. Again, I don't think I'm legally able to tell you that would happen, but maybe it's a way where you get your mom an iPhone and you get your dad a new motorcycle. I don't know. $50 is a lot in promo funds, so best of luck to you. Again, code HARDCOUNT over at prizepicks.com. $5 in lineups gets you $50 in promo funds with the potential, the chance to win some real funds. All right? So, glad to have y'all tuned in. That was just one playoff what if. I got a couple other here that I want to jump into. The college football playoff has a lot of interesting prongs to it with 12 teams in there. There's one variable, though, that I want us to focus on first. We got a number of them we'll jump into. But, like, Georgia is so fascinating right now because we don't know what the quarterback's going to be for them in this college football playoff run. Obviously, you hope Carson Beck can go, right? You hope he's 100% healthy. You hope he's back to his old self. You hope he's even better than before the injury. However, the reality is, from what I understand, I'm not a doctor, but UCLs are not the most comfortable thing to throw a football with. Probably not the most effective injury to have when it comes to you being able to push the ball downfield, as Carson Beck has been known to do. So let's put ourselves in this situation. I got to thinking, man, hey, so let's say Gunner Stockton is your quarterback. I don't think it's wild to assume that the offense could be better under Gunner Stockton. Now, that's not me telling you that Gunner Stockton's a better quarterback than Carson Beck, but I do think that what we saw in the SEC title game probably means something. Like, Texas is the #1 team in America when it comes to yards per play allowed. Georgia came back against Texas. Now, granted, it was a small margin, but they came back against Texas after Carson Beck went out of the game and won that football game behind Gunner Stockton. I think it's interesting to note now, with Gunner Stockton in the football game, are you as dynamic downfield? Probably not, right? Now I look at who they have in the wide receiver room. No knock to the good folks in Athens, but like, who is the dude that you're like, man, he's got to see the football 5 times, otherwise we lose. Again, I'm not knocking anybody, but I don't see a dude who is like the game breaker. I don't see any Jeremiah Smiths, for lack of a better description, for anyone out there in Athens, Georgia right now. So with that being the case, you got to be able to throw the football downfield a little bit. But what I think the bread and butter is for Georgia right now is going north and south in the run game. Give it to ETN. Give it to Frazier. Frazier, high and tight, baby. Let's make sure we hang on to the rock. Let's pound the freaking football, man. And I understand now that there is a certain element in the modern college football, game where you have to stretch the field to some extent. But I think Georgia, if you were to give a Georgia fan truth serum and say, hey, what kind of play style do you want the Dogs to have here in this college football playoff? I think they would say anybody and everybody. We're giving them the juice up front, punch them in the mouth. Offensive line just mauls people. Like, I think that's kind of the attitude that Georgia wants to have. Quite frankly, I think it's the same attitude your head coach wants to have under Kirby Smart. Like, he's from the defensive side of the football, man. He wants to play physical in the trenches. And so I make that point to say, with Gunner Stockton back there for you, you have another element to run the football. I think you double down on running the football. I think it's no secret you're going to run the football. I think it could ultimately be something that makes Georgia hyper-complementary. Because as much as it has been Carson Beck driven to this point in the year, I think that defense still has a lot more in the tank than what we've seen. Like, I cannot get out of my mind the way that defensive line has answered the call in 2 different spots against a good Texas offensive line. Now, the second time, there's no Kelvin Banks. I get that. But, like, Georgia, I think, like, over 2 games against Texas has something like 13 sacks. Like, that's ridiculous. That tells me when they're on, they're a problem. And you're about to enter into 1-game season mode. And we've said Kirby Smart, in a 1-game season, we will take him and feel great about our chances with that bet. I expect the defensive line to be nasty. Off some rest against some of this competition, I expect them to be nasty. So if that's the case now, and you're running the football, game gets condensed, you accentuate your defense. There's a lot here to where I like the recipe of Georgia as we go further and further on in this college football playoff what if. Like, that roster, man, all that's said about how, they're not old Georgia, this is Kirby Smart's best coaching job, and it's still Georgia. Like, do they have as much depth as they've ever had? Probably not. There's still a lot of dudes with 5 stars next to their name that will knock your block off. And I think we're going to see that in the college football playoff. Big reason why we have them playing for a national championship. I do think the Georgia offense could potentially be better under Gunner Stockton, and we're going to have to wait and see here what happens. We mentioned Tennessee early on in this show in relation to what if they end up beating Ohio State. I'll tell you this. If Nico Iamaleava dials in that deep ball the way that we've dialed in the pronunciation of Nico Iamaleava as a college football public, they're going to win the national championship. Full stop. Like, they're averaging 36 points a game right now. They are averaging over 200 yards rushing right now on the ground per game. They have a top 5 defense in all of college football, giving up right around 2 scores a game. If they have all of those things and then you sprinkle in a real, like, bomb kind of presence downfield, that's ridiculous. I don't know how you're matching up with Tennessee, how you're beating Tennessee because of what I just said. They're doing all those things really without a true vertical passing game. When I say vertical passing game, I'm talking like drop it in the bucket, Nico takes 3 steps in a hitch, and just uncorks one down the sideline. Like, have we seen that at different points? Yes. Have we seen it consistently? I don't think we've seen it enough to say that is a part of who Tennessee is. Now, we've seen the RPO post over the middle, catch and run for a long gain, 100% true. But if it's a situation where Tennessee says, hey, safeties, you got to actually keep your toes at, 10 yards deep, 12 yards? If you actually have to honor our vertical passing game to the point where that scares you in this college football playoff run, guess what happens? That box looking real light for Dylan Sampson, who's averaging right around 6 yards a carry. That defense now gets a chance to play with the lead consistently. Like, all those things combined to where I would love Tennessee going forward, and there's a big reason why we think they are one of the sneakiest teams in this college football playoff. Ohio State, the first round, desperate draw, tough draw, but if Nico has that deep ball dialed in now, and that's a part of who they are going forward, all bets are off. Tennessee's going to be a national title caliber team. SMU, not a lot of love for SMU across the board here nationally. SMU, we're talking about you, all right? So make sure that's clear. Y'all, what if SMU wins a college football playoff game? All right, right now they're give or take a little over a touchdown dog to Penn State. Now they got to go to Penn State, probably be whiteout conditions. We'll start here. If SMU beats Penn State, the Penn State side of things is in shambles. Like, vibes are not good in Happy Valley. It would be unhappy Valley in a very real way. Because you're saying, well, we had this college football playoff path that was real nice. We had SMU, we had Boise State, and then this, that, the other. Vibes would be bad. Not really a Penn State talking point here, but just want to make sure we're all aligned. Vibes would not be good for James Franklin and company. And the can he win the big game question mark gets an exclamation mark added after it. Maybe a couple exclamation marks after that question mark. But what I was saying was, if SMU wins a college football playoff game, their first year in the ACC, like, I don't think, it's funny to say this, I don't think that all of us as human beings understand how much money there is in the surrounding area of what SMU is. Like, let me put it simply. They raised $159 million last year for the athletic department. Like $159 million. You know what's crazy? If you get proof of concept, you get more money. Like, I think that's pretty fair to say. So there's already some belief and already a lot of money going into what SMU football is right now. But, like, people give so much grief to Oregon saying, oh, they're buying players, Nike this, Phil Knight that. Like, SMU can hang with them at that point in time. SMU is, like, in that same tier, in my humble opinion, of what they could be going forward. So if they have NIL funds like that, and they win a college football playoff game, and you can pitch the idea of coming and being successful in Highland Park and Dallas, like, I'm just saying, at that point in time, you've locked down your head coach in Rhett Lashley. You got real proof of concept to open the floodgates on even more support financially. SMU, I know the Pony Excess is a 30 for 30. That's awesome. We love that. But, like, at that point in time, man, they would be awake. They would be very much so awake, and that'd be a problem for the rest of the college football world. Here's an interesting one, too. One more I want to get to. Notre Dame. There's a lot of discussion around, well, if they play for a national title, if they go win a national title. And those are definitely fair what-ifs to ask. I think our very own Ari Wasserman has them going to the national championship game, which I'm here for. I very nearly did the same thing. But let's just say that Notre Dame wins 2 games in the college football playoff. So that would mean they make the semifinals. That would mean that they beat Indiana. That would mean they beat Georgia. That would mean that they take down what has been the standard in college football more or less the last 3 years. I'll say this. That would be the flag plant to Marcus Freeman having, like, the new Fighting Irish, right? Because I said this on a previous show. Optically, we view Notre Dame, my generation does, in a little bit of a funny lens because we love the movie Rudy. Was he offsides or not? Who's to say? But we think about Notre Dame in the context of make the college football playoff, get body bagged by a real good roster. Clemson, Alabama in the BCS championship. Like, we think of Notre Dame being one of those teams that, like, can make the dance, but the music starts playing and they get booed off the scene. If you win 2 games and you get one of those wins over Georgia, like, I think one is just like, hey, here we are. Like, the optics around Notre Dame are very, very different than they've ever been, I think, in the last decade plus. More importantly, you know what it gives Marcus Freeman? It gives him ammo. And we said this previously, like, if they made the college football playoff, already, like, you're saying, hey, we're a playoff team, come accomplish what you want to accomplish at Notre Dame. But if you have a win over Georgia, I'll say this, they will have a top 10 class this time next year. Period, the end. Like, Marcus Freeman is already a great recruiter. The tricky part about how Notre Dame has recruited, it's been tough to get commits to stick throughout the course of a cycle. Like, they'll have a lot of success early, season happens, it gets cold in South Bend, maybe that impacts their commitment, maybe it doesn't. But like, if you're able to have real proof of concept over an SEC team and you can make that pitch, I'm not saying they have the number 1 class, but I do think they're a top 10 class, and I do think Marcus Freeman at that point is real deal cooking with gas. Like, at that point, I am buying more stock in Notre Dame and Marcus Freeman than I already am right now. We'll add this into Caden Smith and I were game planning for yesterday's show on Monday, and he brought up a good point. He's like, hey, man, that's really smart that Notre Dame locked in Marcus Freeman right now. And at face value, I'm like, yeah, absolutely it is. Like, one of the best coaches, I think, in the sport, up-and-comer, 100%. But he brought up another point. He said, no. What they think they're about to do, it's smart to make sure you have him locked in right now. And then it dawned on me. If Notre Dame wins these 2 games in front of them and then they're in the national championship, 4-team picture, there's going to be a lot of people that want to hire Marcus Freeman. And I said it before, imagine the Ohio State job somehow, some way opens up if things go south in Columbus. He went to Ohio State. You don't think they would give him a phone call? You don't think the NFL would try and beat down his door even more than maybe it sounds like they have in the past? Like, I'm just saying now, you signed your guy, you put that price tag way up there, but if I'm Marcus Freeman too, if I go beat Georgia and win that game against Indiana in the first round, like, why would I leave? Everything that I've been doing to build this thing to where it's at right now, like, I'm right now reaping the rewards of that. I'm not leaving. It's about to get good. It's just about to get on and popping out here in South Bend. I want to stay and finish this thing. So all that's to say, a lot of ripple effects, a lot of what ifs, but that one with Notre Dame here I think is super interesting, and I will be watching that Georgia-Notre Dame game very, very closely if, in fact, the Fighting Irish get that win over Indiana on Friday night in the first ever college football playoff game. It's crazy that it's actually here, too. Like, we've talked so long about what if they expanded the playoff, and then they actually did, and then now we're actually about to have a home playoff game. That's going to be so cool, man. I cannot wait for that. Cannot wait for that. Hey, here's another what if that we were going to put in that segment, but we think it deserves a little bit more time. What if Oregon wins the whole darn thing this year? Now, it's not a crazy what if to say. On our show, we have picked them to win the national championship outright, seeing the bracket. They got a tricky path now. Got to play Ohio State. Round 2, it's tough to beat a team twice. We have to play Texas. Have to play whoever you see, obviously, in that national championship game at some point. But, like, they also have the best odds to win the national championship. So we don't mean to be chalky, but it is what it is. I think they're the most complete team. I think Dan Lanning right now is as dialed a coach as there is in the country. Like, I think Oregon is ready to go in the whole darn thing. But if they do that, I think it's going to be a Duck Dynasty. Or I think that is just the tip of the iceberg. I think there will be a very, very massive snowball effect out there in Eugene, Oregon, not because of the weather. And the reason why I say that is, at that point in time, what other excuse is there to pitch against Oregon? Like, geography, that's kind of lame. We'll talk more about that in a second. Pro development is there. Bo Nix doing what he's doing right now in the NFL. He might be rookie of the year. Buck Irvin, he's hooping. Like, there's the NFL pedigree. Okay, so you can't make that pitch against them. Well, resources. Yeah, exactly. I wouldn't probably pitch against that either. Nike, not a bad conversation to have. The brand of Oregon. We've said this for a while, man. The brand of Oregon is, I mean, optically as cool as there is in all of college football, depending on how you want to, view some other of these more traditional brands. Like, Oregon is the right now in college football. Oregon is that it school right now in college football. Tell you what, too, if they win the national championship, they got the it coach. Because just what I said a second ago, it will not be the last national championship they win in Eugene under Dan Lanning. And how smart does Dan Lanning look for not taking another job? Because, I mean, I don't know how far things got down the line with him in Alabama or any other school that tried to poach him, but very clearly Dan Lanning saw this vision, has seen this team that he's built right now. He saw the vision for this team that he's built, and to reap the rewards, again, I think that would just kind of be okay, they're here. They're here. And you talk a lot about schools across the college football landscape having, like, opportunity years. Like, hey, man, this is the window. If they don't get it done right now, that's not Oregon. Like, even if they don't get it done right now, they're going to have a chance the next, 5 plus? As long as Dan Lanning is the head coach there, they're going to be in that national championship picture. Why? Because he prioritizes recruiting, he prioritizes the portal, and they've got a roster now that is stocked. All right, there's top 10 classes every year under Dan Lanning. They have the cupboard stocked at the most important position. You got Dante Moore next year at quarterback after Dylan Gabriel. You have potentially Jaron Sagabatelli after him, a 5-star cat. The trenches, they're stocked. Like, the way that he's built this roster, big up front, dude at quarterback, we should be good to go. That's going to work in modern college football. And just what I said a second ago, too, like Oregon right now, I think is a tremendous testament to where we are right now in college football. Like the formula is, if you care enough, if you're able to put the right resources forward, you hire the right coach who cares about recruiting, who knows how to build a roster, who has the right culture in place, you're going to win at a high level. You can win a national championship. Like geography has never mattered less in the sport of college football. It hasn't. It used to be, well, if you're in, the close proximity to Texas, or if you're in Southern California, or if you're in the SEC and Florida range, like Oregon doesn't seem worried about that right now. Oregon's picking and choosing anyone they want, it seems like, on the recruiting trail, landing top dudes from the state of Alabama, top dudes from the state of Texas, go here and there, land a top quarterback. Oh, actually, we'll go to the portal and go land a Dante Moore. Like, they got it rolling right now. So, again, Oregon, from a roster perspective, will always be in that tier. But if they win a national championship, that's just going to flywheel the whole thing. Going to flywheel the whole thing. Now, the question then becomes for some of the naysayers, that you got to let them know, shout out Jalen Milroe, can they sustain? Because the price of success is people take your people. You have success, hey, that offensive coordinator, Will Stein, let's hire him to our school to be a head coach. Spoiler, that's going to happen. I don't know if it's this year, that's going to happen at some point. He's too good of a coach. Tosh LaPoy, I don't know. At some point, maybe he becomes a head coach as well. But we've already seen Dan Lanning, one, have the foresight to be able to build for the future on the roster side. It's the same way at the coaching perspective. It's the same way on the coordinator side of things. Kenny Dillingham gets hired to be a head coach at Arizona State. Who does he hire? Will Stein. Bo Nix goes to the league, goes and grabs Dylan Gabriel from the portal, grabs Dante Moore at the same time. Like, this is sort of how Dan Lanning operates. So I have tremendous confidence that they're going to build that thing with a really strong base to be able to sustain the different pieces they're inevitably going to lose as they have success. But again, if they win the national championship this year, we believe they will, this whole thing is going to flywheel. The momentum will be crazy. And Oregon in itself as a brand, its marketability, the optics for recruits, the way that they have a proof of concept to get you to the NFL and have success there, Oregon under Dan Lanning, I think is the start of a dynasty. I truly do. And that in itself, man, that would flip think about the way that would just flip the rest of the college football landscape on its head, that a school in Eugene, Oregon is out here doing work and becomes the capital is a strong word, but capital of where the national championship resides. That'd be a wild world to live in. Also, it's worth noting they'd win the national title in Atlanta. A lot of folks in SEC country, a lot of recruits in SEC country would, in some way, shape, or form, be privy to that. We'll leave it at that. Hey, the transfer portal is absolutely nuts. I want us to take a step back from talking about specific players so much when it comes to where they might be headed. We'll do some of that in this segment. I want us to talk about who are the transfer portal winners right now, then who's got the transfer portal wish list working a little bit. Make sure you subscribe right here to the On3 YouTube channel. If you're watching right now live, we appreciate the heck out of you. Thank you for making us a part of what you do on a daily basis. So subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you are watching via a one-off YouTube clip, like you found this clip, it's 8 to 10 minutes, however long this ends up being, let's go ahead and subscribe as well. We'd love to have you a part of this whole deal. So let's start with some of these winners, man. It's hard to have a transfer portal winner segment and not mention Ole Miss. Right now, according to us here at On3, they have the #1 portal class. Still some runway to go. Landed a massive get in Luke Haas from Arkansas, who's an absolute chess piece for them offensively. 9 transfers in. If we know Lane Kiffin, they'll take somewhere in the range of 20, but currently, Ole Miss, however you want to slice it, Landon Luke Haas, that was one of my favorite portal additions, as well as Key Lawrence. They're working, right? So Ole Miss is going to work in the transfer portal. Go ahead and take that to the bank as a winner as of right now. Another winner for us, man, Ole Miss. Sorry, not Ole Miss. I'm looking at their portal list as of right now. LSU, in addition to Ole Miss, a portal winner for us. I love the way that they have attacked it at the receiver position. Nick Anderson in the boat, Barry and Brown in the boat. The pedigree for LSU, I think, is already really attractive, but the way that they have continued to stockpile at that position in a dynamic offense under Joe Sloan, where you're going to push the football downfield, that's massive. That's absolutely massive. It's a key ingredient to what they're going to do going forward. Michael Van Buren also was a big portal acquisition for them at the quarterback position. He's a guy that, again, I think his best football is still ahead of him. But if you watch Mississippi State play this year, forget the box score, forget his stats on the year. If you just watched him play this year, that dude's a hooper. That dude's going to be, I think, a star in this sport at some point in time. And so the reality is, with Garrett Nussmeier coming back next year, Michael Van Buren is coming to LSU in every estimation from what I can gauge to sit a year. Just hang out, hold a clipboard, get reps with the twos in practice, learn from Garrett Nussmeier. So when it's his time now to step in again in the SEC, he's able to just take what he learned and run with it and have a lot of success. That's a mature move on Michael Van Buren. That is a savvy move, I think, by LSU to prep for the future, go get a dude that can help them in the future, and kind of have that position already checked for next season. Another school that I'm a big fan of what they've done right now in the portal is Auburn. The way that they're attacking the transfer portal, I think, is very indicative of where Hugh Freeze is right now as the head coach. They went and got not one, but two transfer portal quarterbacks. Side note, I got to go back to Ole Miss because I said I had a fallacy there. Key Lawrence transferred out. Deshaun Womack was the defensive lineman I was thinking about transferring in. So quick correction there if you're watching live. Thank you for that. All right, back to Auburn. Ashton Daniels and Jackson Arnold transferred to Auburn. I'd be surprised if Ashton Daniels was your guy out there on the Plains. But I do think that it's not a bad move to make sure that you have what you need at the quarterback position, whether it's a situation where you got to change during the year, whether it's just insurance. Never bad to have two quarterbacks, all right? Never bad to have some insurance at that position. Also, right now, there are picks out there for Auburn to land the number one player in the transfer portal, and Eric Singleton, who's just a do-it-all wide receiver from Georgia Tech. If you can add him into that fold, if he does end up at Auburn with the Cam Coleman in that RPO system where they're going to throw the ball around the yard, Auburn could be a problem. Auburn could be an absolute problem for you going forward here. So Auburn, for us right now, is a winner. Now, Texas A&M, they're also a winner if you ask me. They aren't necessarily the team that's the highest in the transfer portal rankings as of right now. Landed Micah Hudson. You know how we feel about him. Think that's a really explosive player to add to an offense that's already going to be ground and pound and physical up front. You added some more insurance to the quarterback room, and Jacob Zeno, who's a former Elite 11 guy, and I love the fact that you got some depth there at quarterback. But here's the thing. We shouldn't be surprised by this with Mike Elko. Like, took 27 transfers last year. Like, the dude's going to work the portal a little bit here. Now, I'd be surprised if they took 20-plus transfers this year, but this is not new to him. He's a great evaler. He did more with less at Duke. Landed Nick Scorton last year, who wasn't a tough eval, I'd have to imagine, but still, like Texas A&M with their resources, with who Coach Elko is, what that staff is, they are going to win in the portal. They're doing so right now. So those are the teams that I think have won in the portal. Again, Ole Miss, you lost Key Lawrence, so on the same page here. You land Deshaun Womack, former five-star cat. Also, Landon Lucas, I love that. LSU's a winner. Auburn's a winner. Texas A&M, winners for us when it comes to the transfer portal. Let's talk about some teams, though, that I think are trying to get on that winners list. Some teams that are maybe in the wants category, if you will, at the transfer portal level. John Mateer is a quarterback that I have to imagine a lot of folks would want, should they have the opportunity to go grab him. Right now, Oklahoma is, if I had to pick today, the school that I think would end up landing him. There's a prediction from Pete Nakos out there for Oklahoma to ultimately land John Mateer. However, Miami also in the John Mateer sweepstakes. This is a roundabout way for me to tell you both those schools, whether it's John Mateer or someone else, they need a quarterback. Okay, it's not like rocket science for why Miami would go after a John Mateer. You're losing Cam Ward, a dude who propelled you in a lot of ways and sometimes carried you to 10 wins last year. He's not going to be there next year. So how do you keep that momentum? You go land a high-profile quarterback that is maybe not a Cam Ward's caliber if it's not John Mateer, but like you got to get somebody to run the Shannon Dawson offense. Because that offense, as much as they want to run the football and be smash mouth, that's an air raid system. All right? You want to run an air raid system, got to have a quarterback who can spin it. Now, Oklahoma, if it's not John Mateer, let's just go ahead and live in this world for a second. Michael Hawkins Jr. last year was not bad. Was he great? Not necessarily. I think the way that I would describe Michael Hawkins Jr.'s year at Oklahoma a season ago was like potential. Like, dude, he wasn't supposed to play. It was supposed to be the Jackson Arnold show. Michael Hawkins Jr. gave you some mobility. He flashed at times. I mean, gave everything he had in that Tennessee game at different points. Like, he wasn't ready to play. And so I think the concern would be you could go with Michael Hawkins Jr. next year if he wins the job. And if he wins the job, it means he progressed and he develops as a passer and, like, they're in good shape. However, you do run the risk of reliving the situation you had a season ago with a Michael Hawkins Jr. and kind of being in this position where, okay, we don't have the guy at quarterback. We're in the SEC, so there's no mercy here. Brent Venables has another 7-win season. Like, I don't think you want to live in that world, okay? Now, again, I think they land John Mateer, just so we're on the same page, but both those schools talk about wants, quarterback, top of the wish list. Now, I want to group a few schools together here talking about wide receiver. And there's a pretty intriguing wide receiver portal crop right now. I know guys are coming off the board as we speak, but Penn State, Florida, South Carolina, Michigan, all schools where it's like, hey, man, I'm itching my neck saying, y'all got any more of those wide receivers? Any more of those in stock? Like, there's a lot of those dudes out there right now. Penn State, man, Drew Aller, he's coming back. Don't bring Drew Aller back and run it back in a situation where you're having to be extra gimmicky to have some explosive plays downfield. And I love Tyler Warren. Like, I'm a Tyler Warren guy, but he's a tight end. Can only do so much at tight end. Like, I need a real deal playmaker on the perimeter that scares me to where I can give him, or whoever's playing tight end for you, I suppose, more touches. Because Tyler Warren's probably gone to the league, I'd have to imagine. Drew Aller, though, if he's there for one more year, you make sure you can maximize him at quarterback. Florida, same deal. DJ Lagway's there. Get him as many weapons as possible and allow that offense to be an absolute wagon behind him. Because you got to do it at quarterback. The frustration for me, for a lot of these schools, I'll kind of fill in the blanks here. South Carolina with Lenore Sellers. Potentially, you would imagine a Bryce Underwood at some point in time next year in Ann Arbor would be my guess. Don't throw these talented quarterbacks into a situation where they don't have real deal pieces around them. Because at that point, man, you're setting them up for failure. How many times have we heard the quarterback take the blame? And there's some of that to do, but I think a lot of times quarterbacks get blame when they don't have any support around them. A lot of it's context. And so give them the proper context because you got some studs at South Carolina, Florida, Penn State, and I'm imagining Michigan this time next year. I'd be scouring the transfer portal for any and all wide receivers that can help us. USC, put it pretty simply. We'll talk about them more in a second here because they've got some madness going on right now out there in Los Angeles. I'm so fascinated by what they're going to do up front because so far right now they have lost 7 players in the trenches to the transfer portal. I'm not telling you all those guys are starters, but still losing that kind of depth in general, not great. Also, you're in the Big Ten. Like, it's a line of scrimmage conference. You got to have the big people up front to get it done. So if I'm USC, I'm in the market for any and all offensive linemen and defensive linemen that can help us and help us set that tone in what will be a place where you got to set the tone if you want to win that conference. But we stumbled through that to get to this. Like, USC, I think, is so fascinating right now. For those of y'all that know my background, I grew up not in the shadow of the Coliseum, but, an hour and a half or so drive from USC. Like, I have very vivid memories as a middle schooler, high schooler going to USC games. And it was at different points across, different eras at USC. Like, I was there for a brief stint of the Ed Orgeron, experience when he was the interim head coach. I went and saw games when Clay Helton was the head coach. Like, what's going on at USC is a little bit frightening. So let's start here. USC, as of right now, has lost 19 players to the transfer portal. Yesterday, you find out Zachariah Branch hitting the portal along with his brother. Deuce Robinson, former 5-star wide receiver, tight end, however you want to label him, he's hit the portal. There is zero way to sugarcoat that. Those are bad losses. Okay, you never want to lose a 5-star caliber player. And I understand we're going to break out the copium and try to find a way to put lipstick on a pig and say, well, but he wasn't really that much of it wasn't that much of a piece of our offense. Well, we're better with. No, you're not better without any of those guys. Just full stop. You're not better without those guys at receiver. I don't think it's a thing where there is one answer as to why all these players are leaving USC. I don't think it's nothing, just so we're on the same page, that you're losing those players at wide receiver. I don't think that all of them are NIL related either. I think there's probably multiple variables that you would point to. But here's where I land on this whole situation with USC. It screams to me at some level that there is things not working properly. If you want to label that dysfunction, be my guest. But when things aren't working properly internally, when things are amiss, when the engine's not totally generating how it's supposed to, players can sense that. Players can see that. In today's age of the transfer portal, players can be at their own right to go and leave. And so I think when there's that kind of I don't want to call it a fire because that feels too extreme. But when there's that kind of things amiss, players catch wind of that and they go ahead and take their talents elsewhere. So when there is a level of dysfunction or people not on the same page, it may not be directly the head coach's fault. Like, it may not be a 1-to-1 degree of separation to Lincoln Riley to the problem of why guys would transfer out. But I do think at some point in time, if you're the CEO of a company, the problems fall back on you. Like, if you're the CEO and there's a problem in accounting, you may not have any accounting experience. But guess what? You're still in charge of accounting. Like, that was our thing with Lincoln Riley. We talked about what USC wasn't doing on the defensive side of the football a year ago. Lincoln Riley's an offensive guy. He deals in the offensive side of the football. But guess what? You are the head coach name tag. You're responsible for how your defense plays on Saturdays. My frustration with what I hear going on at USC. Again, I'm out here in Nashville, talk to folks close to USC and learn a lot from them. But from what I can gauge from multiple people around USC, the frustration for me is it doesn't seem like being a part of USC means as much to everyone involved there as maybe it should. And what I mean by that is there are certain brands in college football, certain jobs in college football, where that logo requires a little bit more of you. USC is this way, Texas is this way, Alabama is this way, Michigan is this way, Ohio State's this way. Like these big brands where, like, you don't get to just wear the name tag. You got to be all in. Like being a USC Trojan has to be something you take pride in the minute your feet hit the floor in the morning. Like, it is a part of you. It is who you are. Because if you're not going to be all the way bought in, guess what? You're not going to have the success you want to have. And with, I think, the optics around, like, how full the Coliseum is or isn't any given Saturday, I think that's kind of maybe blown out of proportion. There is still, I think, a very large core of fans around USC that have a very high standard in place. And that standard has been set and upheld by a lot of really successful coaches, a lot of really successful people. And you see the track record and why people have success there. And it goes back to what I just said. There's a level of engagement that you partake in that allows you to be successful. Like, it's tough to make this comp because it's such a different era of college football, but like Pete Carroll, he was all the way in. He wrapped his arms around Los Angeles. He wrapped his arms around being in Southern California. He was all the way into what USC was and who USC is. Same deal. Ed Orgeron, for a very, very brief period of time, did that at a high level. I think he should have been named the head coach. That's neither here nor there. Clay Helton did it at a high level for a very brief period of time. But the reason why it's so frustrating, if you're watching the pieces not totally fit properly for USC right now, is like there's no structural reason why USC can't be a powerhouse on the West Coast. Like, there's not. And if you don't believe me, look at what Oregon's doing. You push back and say, JD, but Oregon's got that Nike money. Oregon's got the NIL checks they're writing with ease. Maybe so. You don't think there's money in LA? You don't think there's people with deep pockets that got a boat out there in the bay in Laguna Beach or somewhere, or Manhattan Beach, wherever? Pick a spot. Like, you don't think there's people with money there that care about USC football if they were to be activated the proper way? I don't think so. Also, talk about the fertile recruiting ground. Like Eugene, Oregon, call a spade here. There's not exactly 5 stars just running rampant around there. There are in the Southern California area. Like the Trinity League in the state of California is, I would argue, the greatest league in high school football when it comes to talent. If you just put a fence around Southern California, forget the state for a second, just a fence around Southern California, kept all that top talent home, how good would you be? Take it a step further. Quarterback position alone. Dudes out of Southern California, the state of California in general. C.J. Stroud, Jaden Daniels, Bryce Young, one-time USC commit. Like there is real deal reason for you to have top talent every single year. In USC, I mean, top 15 recruiting class, not bad. It's far below, I think, what you can accomplish there, just so we're on the same page. So that's, I think, where I just wanted to arrive at. There's no structural reason why USC can't be activated and be a powerhouse on the West Coast like tomorrow. That's the other part of this. As frustrating as all this is, as weird as this looks optically to lose 5-star receivers and to have things not feel right and to be like, wow, what's going on? There seems to be a disconnect. As much as it feels like the sky is falling, here are the facts. We are sitting here today in December talking about what USC could be if they got the offense right. How wild is that? Because the last couple of years, what has it been? Man, can USC play any defense? Y'all, they got, I think, one of the best defensive staffs in the whole darn country. Between D'Anton Lynn, Eric Henderson, like they got some dudes now, all right? They're going to play good defense. They played good defense last year if we want to go ahead and use the filter of the previous 2 seasons. Like, last year was freaking phenomenal. If I told you before the year started, hey, you're going to hold teams to less than 28 points a game, will you take that as a USC fan? Absolutely no questions asked. That's where you're living right now. USC's problem has been finishing games. Well, they've had a lead in every fourth quarter they played in besides Notre Dame. Notre Dame's a college football playoff team. Even that game was winnable at different points, or at least in position to make it more competitive than the final score ended up being. USC is not that far off. They're not. So all this frustration with the portal and the guys you're losing and the things you're hearing that I'm hearing about how USC is running internally and the things that maybe you would like to have at a different place, USC at the end of the day still has a really big engine, man. Really big engine. The thing about big engines, when they're not working properly, they don't work. Obviously, when things aren't firing on all cylinders, you're standing stagnant on the side of the road on 55 South saying, hey, I need to lift. However, when the engine's working the right way, you got real horsepower, you're dangerous. That's what USC is. And so I hope it's Lincoln Riley. This is not me implying it's not. But there's a lot there for USC to really ramp things up a little bit, to really be a power in college football. And again, structurally, it's all there for the taking. You hope and you pray there can be the right amount of engagement, of activation, of buy-in to get USC back to where you expect them to be if you are a USC fan. And honestly, in the college football public, you expect more from them in general. So neither here nor there, but that's my take on USC. And I wouldn't pound the alarm on the sky falling with the transfer portal acquisitions. They're not good. It's a horrible look. However, I think there's more to that whole situation than what meets the eye. And I think USC this time next year could be more than fine. So the plot thickens, and we'll keep a pulse on that. Speaking of the plot thickening, man, there's going to be a very interesting plot here when Texas takes the field for their college football playoff game at home against Clemson. And there's a lot of storylines here. Like, you could talk about Steve Sarkisian and his quest for his own national championship as a head coach. You could talk about, does this mean Texas is finally back because they played for the SEC title and they're in the college football playoff? I think this is more of a storyline that I'm tracking around who Quinn Ewers is and what he's done this year, and can he do it in this game? More on that in a second. One, make sure you're subscribed here to the On3 YouTube channel. Second, this segment and this show brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. Have a Prize Picks square I want to tell you about a little bit later in the segment, but code HARDCOUNT, $5 in lineups, $50 in promo funds. So here's my take on the whole Quinn Ewers thing. This is your moment if you're Quinn Ewers. Not to be dramatic. We try not to do that on the show, but like, this is your moment. It's all set up. It's all set up. Like, the movie script is set to a way where you got a college football playoff game at home. You came back for a year like this, have a chance to go on a college football playoff run, if you will, to a national title with what this roster is, with who your head coach is, with who you are, who you were cracked up to be, go on a national championship, change your draft stock perspective, like also you're favored by 11.5 at the crib. It's all set up. You're also the only quarterback in this college football playoff field with playoff experience. So the skins on the wall should be there. There's a lot said, too, about who your backup is. That's totally fair. Arch Manning, last name Manning, you're going to get some juice. Like, dude's super talented. His time in Austin is going to be awesome. I can't wait for it. However, I've said this yesterday on our prediction show. I don't think that this is the Arch Manning game. Not because I don't love Arch Manning and what he brings to the table, but, like, you shouldn't need the Arch Manning run-the-ball packages on 3rd and 2nd in this spot. You shouldn't. Like, this is your team if you're Quinn Ewers. This is your spot. This is your game. This is your year. And guess what? It's winning time. I love so much the Winning Time documentary on 30 for 30. It's with, like, Reggie Miller. And I think honestly, I say I love it. I haven't seen it in a long time. But the quote from that 30 for 30 that stuck with me is, there is a time to play. There's a time to win. For Quinn Ewers now, the better part of the last few months, it's been a time to play. You could argue the SEC championship game is a time to win, but like, this is legitimately like, it's put up or shut up. You could be home this time next week if you don't get a dub at your place against Clemson. The pressure is on. And I think in addition to that, we haven't really seen the Quinn Ewers that we expected to see this season since the game against Michigan. Honestly, if we want to be really harsh, you could argue the game against Florida, depending on how you want to value the Florida win at that point in time with no DJ Lagway for them. The preseason juice around Texas, in large part, was linked to who Quinn Ewers is and to what we thought he would be. And that was, I think, a fair thing to say out loud. Like, I think Quinn Ewers was the reason why you were expectant for Texas this year, and you haven't seen it. So now with the brightest lights, with everyone watching, is this the chance where you just go and cut it loose and ball out? For me, I'll just go ahead and say this. I think he is. I think this is the time. I think he does do it. I think this is a classic, like, so close for Quinn Ewers to put it together than he finally does in a big spot against Clemson. Because we've seen different blips on the radar that make us say, oh, that's the Quinn Ewers we've come to expect. That's the Quinn Ewers that we know. The A&M game, you saw it. I mean, the turnovers kind of dampened that whole party. Even against Georgia, he went for over 3 bills against Georgia. Now the turnovers, again, dampen that party, but you've seen the flashes. I think against Clemson, with them coming to his place, this is where he puts it all together and has a lot of success. So, again, I think that happens. I think he does meet the moment. I think Quinn Ewers balls out. But let's just explore the other side of that whole hypothetical for a second. There's a lot there. The best way, I think, to summarize it, if I'm trying to give advice to Quinn Ewers, if he were listening to this show, I'm sure he tunes in every week, don't let this get weird. Don't let it get weird, because let's just say that you don't play well against Clemson, but you still win the football game. Inevitably, with who your backup is, with what he was out of high school, with the lack of consistency we've seen from number 3, the question would be asked, and the question would gain some more validity, is like, hey, does Arch give us a better chance here in this playoff run? We were lucky to squeak by the 12th seed in this whole tournament. Does Arch give us a better chance? I'm not saying it. I've held for a long time. I think Quinn Ewers is the guy out there in Austin, but I think that the answer of yes, he does, I think becomes a little bit more easy to get behind if you're a Texas fan, because at that time, like, it's put up or shut up. It's win or lose. Let's go make a run here with Arizona State on us in that next week. Now, the other side of that, too, in addition to, the don't let it get weird kind of thought, is like, what if they just lose, period? What if they lose that game? We don't pick them to lose, but if they did lose, the draft stock conversation becomes kind of bizarre. Quinn Ewers has already said he's not sure if he'll go to the NFL next year. You would think he would, but, like, let's say that Quinn Ewers plays poorly, they lose. You pair that with the last couple of weeks with what you've seen from him or haven't seen from him, and you're like, is Quinn Ewers a second-round pick? Is he a third-round pick? What is he next year? Should he come back? Y'all, I'll be real. I don't think he should come back to Texas if he's not going to go pro. I think if I'm Quinn Ewers, I would go somewhere else, because the Arch Manning era is here. And I don't know that coming back for another year would be all that well received from the folks in Austin. Just my own 2 cents. Don't know that, but I would think that would be the way that things would go. So the prize pick square that I love in this game, again, it's funny to say all those things about what he wouldn't do in the game and like how it could be bad for him, and then circle back to I think he's going to ball out. I think he balls out. I mean, I'll take the prize pick square for more than 260.5 pass yards. Feel pretty good about doing it. Again, code hard count, $5 in lineups, $50 in promo funds. But this is the moment for Quinn Ewers, just so we're all on the same page. This is the moment. Pressure is packed for him in this spot. And you hope he balls out if you're a Texas fan and you start to go on a little college football playoff run and the vibes are immaculate, the momentum's there. But this is the moment. I think he has to meet it. I think he will meet it. But it's all right there. It is winning time for number 3 in Austin. Speaking of winning time, quick note here. My alma mater, the Cornell Big Red, just found out today we're going to be the national champs this time next year in the FCS, man. Apparently that conference, the Ivy League, accepting a bid now in the FCS playoff. So very convenient. They waited till your boy got out of the conference to make that move. I understand. I would be scared as well. However, quick shout-out to the Ivy League. Quick shout-out to the folks out there in Ithaca, New York. A quick shout-out to y'all making this show what it is, man. We appreciate y'all being tuned in. We appreciate y'all consistently making us a part of your day, whether you're at work or whether you're listening, getting ready for finals. Maybe you're on Christmas break. Maybe you're listening on the ride home. We appreciate the heck out of you for that. For Caden Smith on the ones and twos producing the show, for myself, Jody PicKell, you matter. We appreciate y'all. We love y'all. Going to keep this party rolling, and we will see y'all next time.